Good morning. Korea is in on international efforts to combat Islamic State militants. Korea's National Security Advisor Kim Kwan-jin meets with officials in Washington. The first lawsuit against tobacco companies backed by a government organization, and the first lawsuit against alcohol companies by victims of alcohol dependency. The battle is on. The third youngest major winner at 19 years of age, Korean teenager Kim Hyo-ju defeats Australian veteran Kerry Webb by one shot for the AVN Cup. And some things are worth waiting for. You really have no choice but to wait for a meal at some of these restaurants. On Korea Today, Monday, September 15th, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And good morning. Hope your week is off to a great start. I'm Oh Jin-ju alongside Kim Min-jung and Kim Young. Today we start with some exciting sports news coming out of France.
And it was an exciting one, right down to the final wire. We're talking about the AVN Cup that was held, and that was now we have the third youngest major winner ever to win that major there, and that is Kim Hyo-ju, and she was able to beat Kerry Webb by one stroke on the final hole on the 18th. Now she joins the top three. Morgan Pretzel is the youngest ever to win a major, and Lexi Thompson the second youngest.
That's right. This teenager, it really is an overnight sensation, and at the moment of her victory, she didn't even know that she had won at first. Her caddy had to tell her, "You won." She said, "No, I haven't." She was in disbelief, and
Exactly.
this is really how new and green she is to the sport. But she
well
won,
said,
right?
new and green, and won on the final shot on the green.
That's right, perfect, right? Well, S.J. Lee will have more on this story later on in our show. But first, let's get a check on our top story this Monday morning. Korea's National Security Advisor is now in Washington, D.C. to meet with his U.S. counterpart Susan Rice and other senior officials and discuss a wide range of issues, including North Korea. On his arrival in Washington on Sunday, Mr. Kim Kwan-jin told reporters that the Korean government will support international efforts to combat Islamic State militants, mostly with humanitarian assistance, in addition to the $1.2 million that it has provided for Iraqi refugees. He declined to comment on whether Seoul has been asked to provide troops or military transportation in the fight against terrorists. During the four-day trip, Kim is also expected to hold close consultations over the issue of the three American citizens who are detained in North Korea.
And speaking of those detainees in the north, a 6-year sentence was handed down to one of the three Americans after a 90-minute trial with no chance of an appeal. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Sunday American detainee Matthew Miller was sentenced to 6 years of hard labor for entering the country illegally to commit espionage. The 24-year-old is accused of tearing up his visa when he entered Pyongyang in April for the purpose of being jailed purposely to investigate the North's human rights situation. No trial date has been set for Jeffrey Fowl, another U.S. citizen who was arrested in May for leaving a Bible at a sailors club, and Korean-American Kenneth Bae is serving out a 15-year sentence for alleged hostile acts. U.S. State Department spokesman Jen Psaki urged the North to grant amnesty and release the three American prisoners. And meanwhile, on Tuesday, top diplomats such as Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se, as well as his counterpart, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, are expected to hold talks regarding the North's human rights on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meeting.
And plans are in the works to raise the prices of cigarettes in tandem with consumer prices. The Ministries of Finance and Health and Welfare are pushing to have the cigarette prices rise for every 5% increase in consumer prices, in effect raising the price of a pack of cigarettes by around 300 won or 30 cents every 2 to 3 years. This move follows the government's latest announcement of a plan to hike the tobacco prices by up to 80% starting next year from the current 2,500 won. One report by the Korea Institute of Public Finance shows by 2025, a pack of cigarettes would cost over 6,000 won, or about $5.80, assuming that consumer prices rise 3% every year.
Now, while the government is trying to cut the nation's smoking rate by raising the price of cigarettes, the National Health Insurance Service has filed a $52 million lawsuit against major tobacco companies in Korea. This is the first time a state-run agency has taken legal action against tobacco companies. The first trial was held last Friday. And to tell us what the key issues are in this lawsuit, we connect live to our Choi Hyung-ju, who is out at the Seoul Central District Court. Hyung-ju, fill us in on the latest.
Good morning, Jinju. As you said, the first government organization's lawsuit against tobacco companies kicked off here last Friday. The court debate between NHIS and tobacco companies included compensation for tobacco-related diseases. Meanwhile, following this lawsuit, now the victims of the alcohol dependency are filing a lawsuit against liquor companies. Well, as you can see, the health-related court debates and the lawsuits have been increasing and definitely capturing public attention. Big tobacco litigation has captured the attention of not only the legal community, but also the entire nation. This is the first lawsuit by a government organization claiming compensatory damages for medical expenses in treating tobacco-related illnesses.
The key to this case is whether they can prove that cigarettes are harmful to everyone, all smokers, or varies person by person. They also need to prove how long the victims smoked. Plaintiffs will not be stating the exact number of victims and who they are, so it's conceptually invalid to claim damages.
The first court debate has been a tight battle. The major issue is whether the NHIS can prove how smokers are directly affected by cigarettes.
The NHIS's big data review shows that about 22% of the 270,000 deaths were due to cigarettes. This shows how tobacco is fatally affecting public health. We spend about $170 million in medical expenses, and we had to file the lawsuit to prevent leaking further expenses for such medical treatment.
This is not the first lawsuit regarding cigarettes. In 1995, a family first filed a lawsuit for lung cancer caused by cigarettes. Until today, there have been 4 cases, but none of them have won. However, this new lawsuit is notable in that it is a class lawsuit by the government organization against 3 tobacco companies.
In Korea, a class suit is very rare. U.S. state governments have filed suits against tobacco companies, and courts ruled the companies to pay damages of about $200 billion over 25 years. It's advantageous to have the government body, instead of an individual, filing a suit in terms of providing evidence and data.
As with the U.S. tobacco case, there is a great deal of attention focused on how the Korean lawsuit will turn out.
We're getting a lot of support from academia, NGOs, and the medical community, especially the World Health Organization, which supports our ongoing tobacco suit. We have an MOU with the WHO regarding tobacco regulations, so we exchange information and data from a network of experts in the field.
Like the previous suits brought on by individuals, NHIS claims once again that there haven't been any clear warning labels. Likewise, big alcohol has also been targeted for its ill effects on national health, and it's being sued for insufficient alcohol warning labels as well. Kim Ha-seop suffered from an alcohol dependency over a decade. Now, along with 25 other victims, he has filed a lawsuit demanding compensation of over $2 million.
Some people lose their jobs, attempt to commit suicide, and get divorced because of alcohol addiction. I believe we have to prevent people from falling into such hopelessness. I believe, of course, the government should revise the laws.
The main reason for these suits is that warning labels on the bottles are so small that they are difficult to recognize. Not to mention the government and alcohol companies have allowed for a situation conducive for alcohol dependency. Some alcohol addiction victims have been in litigation for compensation over the past 10 to 20 years.
People with alcohol addiction cannot control their own drinking. So alcohol companies should enlarge the labels and add stronger warnings. The government or the alcohol industry should build a medical center as part of their social responsibility, giving back some of their profits. Also, we are seeking compensatory damages for each individual.
The litigants involved in tobacco and alcohol suits will have to battle hard, as they still have quite a long journey ahead. Well, alcohol dependence victims' lawsuit against alcohol companies is the world's only case at the moment, and they say it's going to take quite a long time for this legal battle. Jinju?
And Hyungju, back to the tobacco lawsuit. The first hearing took place on Friday, and neither the National Health Insurance Service and tobacco companies are willing to give ground. A fierce battle is expected. What are their legal bases?
Well, it is a really fierce battle, as I've seen last Friday. Tobacco companies are quite confident and optimistic in a legal perspective that they say that NHIS statistics do not show the individual's medical records, so it is difficult to prove and win the case. But on the other hand, NHIS says that according to WHO, the nicotine is an addictive drug on par with cocaine and heroin. So it's trying to prove and show that tobacco is seriously affecting national health.
So we're expecting the next court hearing to be held in early November. And the government agency will first have to prove that it has the right to demand direct compensation from the tobacco companies. Thank you, Hyungju, for that report today. That was our Choi Young-ju reporting live on the first tobacco battle between a state-run agency and tobacco companies.
Good Monday morning. It's time to run through the front pages of your newspapers. And we have a variety of stories ahead of us this morning in the local papers. So we'll get right to them. Let's first begin with an image here on 조선일보. And it's this one right here. And it's the title says, Korea, Japan smiling at each other for a change. Now, Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se attended a joint culture event with Japan and met with Tokyo's ambassador to Seoul yesterday. A move seen as quite unusual given the current Seoul-Tokyo ties, with almost all top-level political and diplomatic exchanges effectively on hold. Now, the two viewed a joint performance by the two countries' traditional music troops at the COEX Convention Center here in southern Seoul. And it marks the first time that Seoul's top diplomat has attended the annual event. And now let's move to this article here on the side. This one is called Drafting Regulations to Weed Out Public Enterprises with Chronic Deficit. And as said in the subheadlines, the ruling party is seeking to revise laws related to the management of public institutions, particularly those suffering from huge amounts of deficit. And such laws are to be applied to public enterprises like the Korea Coal Corporation as well as Korail. And now going over to 동아일보 for the top headline here regarding the Seoul ferry tragedy. And the title says, Still No Cure, a Divided Square. Now, as you can see here in the sub-headlines, at Gwanghwamun Square, the bereaved families of the victims of the Seoul ferry disaster have been staging sit-in demonstrations for 2 months now. And citizens have also joined these families in protest rallies from time to time, demanding a breakthrough in the special Seoul bill. So on this side, the upper part are the protesters who are with the victims' families. However, on the other side of the main road, a throng of people rallied against those holding the sit-in. Just this past Saturday afternoon, they were opposing the special Seoul bill for some 2 hours, chanting across the streets, and the Gwanghwamun Plaza was thus divided. And next up is 중앙일보, as you did here at the top of the hour. The exciting news here. The big news, let me just quickly mention the victory. Teenage golfer Kim Hyo-ju wins her first LPGA major and going up against a 7-time major winner, more than twice her age. The 19-year-old Kim came from a shot back on the last hole to beat Australian great Kerry Webb by 1 stroke on Sunday and win the Avian Championship. Now, more details, of course, with our sports guru, S.J. Lee. But in the meantime, we'll switch gears to this headline at the bottom of the front page. and this one is on the diplomatic front. The headline reads, Korea, U.S., Japan foreign ministers to meet for North Korean human rights talks in New York. Now, on Tuesday, the top diplomats, including Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, and Japan Secretary for Foreign Affairs Kishida Fumio, are expected to hold talks regarding the North human rights on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meeting. And as it is noted here, the allies are working with the United Nations to set up this meeting of foreign ministers in an effort to rally support for a UN resolution on North Korea's human rights situation. And finally, let's go to the economy here on the Mail Business newspaper for this headline about raising fees. Now, the title says utility bill hikes to be announced by local governments facing welfare defaults. So a series of utility bill hikes are to be announced by the central government as well as local governments as they are facing budget constraints. Beginning with a host of regional tax hikes from next month, there will be additional hikes in public utility charges, including tobacco prices, a residence tax, and traffic fees, as well as water and electricity bills next year. And that was a look at your newspaper headlines for this Monday. And now following are the stock numbers from Friday.
The weather this weekend was absolutely perfecto. It was gorgeous, crisp, and really nice.
Yep, that's right. It did stay a little bit warmer, though, during the day. And we'll see what we're expecting for today, our first day of the working week with Chun Sung-cho. Good morning, Sung-cho.
Good morning to you, Sung-cho.
Good morning, guys. We're starting off the week with overcast skies nationwide. As a high-pressure system over the northern regions moves further north, its outer bands will affect our weather system, sending in a lot of clouds our way. These clouds will bring a bit of precipitation in some areas, but the amount won't be significant, just less than 5 millimeters in Jeju in the morning and in the central regions in the afternoon. On Wednesday, we have heavier rain in the forecast in the southern regions. Now, moving on to our temperatures, the conditions outside will get slightly cooler this week, becoming more like the typical autumn weather. With that, let's take a closer look at the temperature readings. Temperatures don't vary much all throughout the nation, with midday highs just hovering around mid-20s. Seoul, Gwangju, Busan, and Jeju are at 26, Gangneung the hottest at 27, and Daegu and Daejeon are the coolest at 25 degrees Celsius. This is all for me with the weather forecast. Back to you, Minjung.
More troubling news from the Islamic State militants over the weekend. They have executed a third Westerner, a Scottish aid worker, and we'll get the details on this story from our Eunice Kim, who joins us from the news center. Good morning to you, Eunice.
Good morning, Minjung.
Now, it's the first Scottish victim, and the British Prime Minister is promising justice.
That's right. If anything, this could serve as more fuel for the global coalition being formed against the brutal extremists, some analysts say. British Prime Minister David Cameron condemned the Islamic State's beheading of a Scottish aid worker as an act of pure evil and promised that the UK will do everything in its power to hunt down the, quote, monsters and ensure they face justice however long it takes. Now, the video appearing to show the killing of David Haynes was released Sunday in footage consistent in its brutality with those of American journalists James Foley and Stephen Sotloff. U.S. President Barack Obama said the United States stood shoulder to shoulder with the United Kingdom and promised a broad coalition of nations would bring to justice those who committed the, quote, barbaric act. And in a statement released to the media, Haynes' brother said the former Royal Air Force aircraft engineer and father to two daughters would be most remembered for his boundless enthusiasm enthusiasm in his humanitarian work, recalling that he helped whoever needed help, regardless of race, creed, or religion. Haynes was kidnapped in March of last year in Syria while working with a French humanitarian aid agency there. And a fourth doctor has died in Sierra Leone, becoming the latest health worker to fall to the Ebola outbreak. Dr. Olivier Buck died late Saturday, a chief medical officer said, hours after the World Health Organization said it could not help medically transport her to Germany. It is a huge setback to the impoverished country battling the highly contagious virus amid a shortage of healthcare workers. The WHO estimates more than 300 health workers have become infected with Ebola in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone alone, with nearly half of them now dead. Meanwhile, head of the WHO, Margaret Chan, said the overall Ebola death toll has exceeded more than 2,400 as of last Friday, with the number of cases reaching 4,800.
The situation seems to be getting out of hand. Let's turn to the Vatican now. Pope Francis married 20 couples on Sunday, and this is attracting a lot of attention because among the couples were individuals who traditionally might have been viewed as living in sin.
That's right, Minjung. It was Pope Francis's first wedding in his 18-month papacy, and it is being viewed as a move reflecting his desire to see the Catholic Church become more inclusive. Among the 40 men and women married on Sunday at St. Peter's Basilica were those who were already living together, as well as a bride who was a single mother and a groom whose prior marriage had been annulled. The Argentine pontiff took each couple through their vows, and in his homily, he said the church should forgive those who had sex outside of marriage or didn't obey church teachings to the T. He likened families to bricks that build society, and he also said that marriage was real life, not some TV show. He also advised the newlyweds to not let the sun go down on an argument, adding that the love of Jesus would help when their love becomes lost, wounded, or worn out. The world's clergy will gather in Rome in October to discuss issues such as marriage, divorce, and contraception, as Pope Francis has called on the church to end its obsession with teachings on the topics and become more merciful. With that, we'll wrap your look at the global headlines we're following this morning.
And still to come, music video parodies of Pharrell Williams' Happy goes viral worldwide. And what are some of the cultural differences between Korea and France? We'll get a French perspective on that. And cool dunking acrobatics and much more coming your way. So stay tuned.
The 2014 Gwangju Biennale is still going on in Gwangju, and many of people out there might believe that all the action is there, but there's still a lot going on in the art community here in Seoul as well as the surrounding provinces, and our Im Yoon-hee joins us with a look at that. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Right, so you're exactly right. You know, so much attention is focused on the Biennale, but we can't forget about these other galleries. So the Rium Gallery here in Seoul, the Rium Samsung Art Gallery is an exquisite gallery with very unique work, and so they're actually celebrating their 10th year anniversary this year, and so they've put together a collection, which as a whole really speaks on how art can transcend any border. So take a look. Historical treasures from the Joseon kingdoms. They serve as both artifacts as well as works of art. Traditional Korean artwork includes anything from paintings to the art of beautiful moon jars. This one flawlessly created in the 18th century, displaying a perfectly rounded, almost seamless creation. And here, one artist has recreated the Korean peninsula and the millions of lives that come together to make up the country they call home. Another artist captures some somber feelings of depression and tragedy on the canvas, while other world-renowned artists show illusion and a sense of the contemporary through their use of various different mediums in this unique collection of both international and Korean artists.
What would have otherwise seemed like impossible communication through these artworks, international communication has been opened.
But here, art isn't just for the eyes. One artist incorporates the audience in a performance-type creation, while other artists create an experience for the audience to walk through. From Korean to foreign artists, from the contemporary to the classical to the traditional, art is a bridge through time and space.
So judging from the report, it seems to have a huge variety of different artworks. So why so many? I think that's the main question here.
Right, so like the name, the title of the exhibition, Beyond, Beyond and Between, they really want to include everything. So this is actually privately collected by the chairman of Samsung, Lee Gun-hee. And so he really is passionate about art and all different kinds of art. And so he did put together this collection over the years. And so if you go there, you really can see anything from, like you saw in the report, beautiful moon jars to anything from paintings. They even have contemporary modern artists. So you really get to see a range, very inclusive range. And they have it separated into these three sections. So you get a sense of, this all-inclusion of art that they really want to just put together.
So installation, performance, along with video art,
just
all
everything.
included. So this is a very big mix, and it looks beautiful,
Beautiful
right?
museum.
But one of the things is that if you're not an avid fan of art, or if you haven't been following art for a very long time, it's kind of difficult to get into because it's hard to understand. Sometimes you just look at it and you're like, I don't know what it's saying, right? But so this museum actually incorporates a lot of not instructions, but explanations on the pieces itself.
So they want it to not just be for looking, they also want to teach people about art. So they do hold talks by various artists, curators from both Korea and around the world. And so for this particular exhibition, they will be holding talks through November. And so you can find more information on their website. But really, that's a unique opportunity to go see artists talk about not just their art, but other arts from different artists, but also curators from around the world. They can see them talk about just all different types of art and how they really want to make this museum, the center of Asian art. So hopefully it'll be, the forefront.
Sounds like a perfect opportunity for people to get into, and you can find more information at liam.samsungfoundation.org, right? All right, thank you very much for joining us for that.
It's always a pleasure.
And still ahead on Korea Today, we'll focus from one piece of art or one type of art to the culinary arts, right? There are certain restaurants that you just go to and you can find a seat right away, but there's also some restaurants that you have to wait in line for. Now, these restaurants are top-notch, and we are going to have Laura Di Nucci from Italy. She spotted something about Korea that she was curious about, people standing in really long lines and queues to have some food there. And the turnover rate at some of these restaurants are just fabulous. So why the wait? Well, you'll see on INS&OUTS.
And time now for news sum up. For those of you planning to take to the roads to enjoy the beautiful autumn colors, perhaps sometime later this month or early next month, you must first make sure that your car is in good shape.
You never want to miss the autumn foliage here in Korea. Our Seo Mi-sorang has some tips for us, and she joins us from the digital room. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. I do have some tips to share with you guys. Now, to keep it simple, I've narrowed it down to 3 points, so let's see what they are. 1, give it a good thorough clean. Most cars will have fine dust from the summer sitting in all the nooks and crannies, and this will deteriorate the car's functions faster. 2, check the fog lights. Foggy mornings and nights are quite common during autumn, so you want to make sure that they're working okay to avoid any accidents. And 3, don't park near piles of fallen leaves. These can often block up the muffler and cause the car to heat up. So that was your tip of the day. Now, elsewhere, health-related issues got people's attention. As some of you may have experienced firsthand, it is peak season for allergic rhinitis right now because of the increased grass pollens in the air. And on a recent survey conducted by the Health Ministry, 13%, or roughly 1 in 8 Korean adults, said that they suffered from severe depression in the past 12 months. Meanwhile, a different survey this time asked around 1,000 adults over the age of 50 what they thought was the single most important factor for a happy retirement. So here are the results. Health came in at number 1 with nearly 30% of respondents saying that good health was crucial. Now, I guess this isn't surprising because, being sick is no fun regardless of your age. But what is interesting is that after health, more people picked money as being the most important rather than their spouses, especially the female respondents. 16% said that their spouse was the most important factor, but 26%, so 10% more, chose money instead. And lastly, according to the Science Ministry, the satellite that you see here, Korea's Science and Technology Satellite 3, avoided a near collision with a fragment of an old Soviet satellite, the Meteor 110. And with that, it's a wrap for today's edition of your Daily News Sum Up.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA, where the 2014 Arirang Championship finished off their 4 rounds of play. And of course, with Korea's Kim Hyo-ju starting off the 4th round with the lead, it was her job to hold on to it. And what a dramatic final round it was as she struggles in the back 9, but it was her clutch birdie in the 18th hole that made the difference as Kerry Webb bogeys with a single-stroke lead, and the 19-year-old wins the 2014 Arirang Championship, finishing off with 11 under par overall. And now moving on to the Incheon Asian Games as the Korean men's volleyball team entered the Athletes Village, becoming the first group to do so, but it's football where the first matches took place as the men's U23 team faced off against Malaysia to kick off their tournament. And it was a rather easy first match for the men's side as Im Chang-woo scored in the 26th minute to open things up for the Koreans, but it was Kim Shin-wook and Kim Seung-dae's second half goals which sealed the deal for Korea as they win the opener 3-0. Meanwhile, over on the women's side, the women's team faced off against Thailand to kick off their tournament, and Chung Sarbin's goal in the 11th minute gave them the early lead, but it doesn't end there. They score 4 more times in the match to win their opener 5-0. Your final score. And with the Asian Games just around the corner, the KBO played their final game before the Asian Games break as the Hanwha Eagles beat the Kia Tigers 10-6, with the Lotte Giants beating the Doosan Bears on a walk-off home run 4-3, and the LG Twins crushed the Samsung Lions 12-3. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the NC Dinos take on the SK Wyverns. And of course, going into the game, here we go over to the second inning of the game. Eric Thames to lead things off. There it goes to deep right, and that's gone, and the NC Dinos take an early 1-0 lead. 5th inning, Na Ju-hwan RBI double to left center. That ties the ball game at 1-1. But next inning, Lee Jong-wook with an RBI double to right gives the NC Dinos the lead again. But Chejung in the bottom of the inning, that's a 2-run shot, and the SK Wyverns take a 3-2 lead. That lead isn't kept for long as Park Jung-jun's ground out to first brings home Lee Sang-ho, and we're tied 3-3. But SK refuses to go down as he scored twice in the 8th inning, including Kim Jae-hyun, who steals home as the SK Wyverns win this one 5-3. And now let's take a look at how the KBO standing looks, with the league now on a break due to the Asian Games. And of course, taking a look at the standings here, we're going to see that the Samsung Lions are holding on to their first place lead, with Nexon closing in 3.5 games back, with NC slowly going downhill and the LG Twins hanging on to the final playoff spot. Meanwhile, taking a look at the bottom half of the table here, the SK Wyverns in 5th place, trailing LG by just a game and a half, with the Doosan Bears and the Lotte Giants still in the race. But the Kia Tigers and the Hanwha Eagles season look lost as they're currently at the bottom of the cellar. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a great weekend. It's time for another edition of Viral Feed, and I am Simon O. Let's get started with today's stories before I distract you with my enormous belly from that Chuseok break that we're just getting back from. I had way too much to eat. All right, a couple of very interesting stories to get into today. Let's start off with something that I'm not very good at: dancing. It's to a song that you've probably heard before, but in a setting that you may be surprised by. Let's have a look. You've all heard this song before, right? It's Pharrell Williams' Happy. Some of you may be aware, of course, that it's from the soundtrack to Despicable Me Part 2. The lyrics are all about positivity, and people across the world have been posting their parodies for the music video, which, by the way, incidentally, was a whopping 24 hours old. Now, all across the world, as you can see, people got into the action, dancing and showing their happiness, and of course, people in Seoul as well were able to get in on the action. Now, all across the world, and especially in this Seoul version of the happy video, what I love is that there are some very, very talented dancers, but on the whole, it's just ordinary people having a good time. They're not necessarily pros, they may not even be very good dancers, but they're just gonna go ahead and give it a go because, as the title implies, they are happy. Do you love how great everyone is just getting into it?
Let's make our Korea Today version of the happy song.
We'll start with Simon.
I anticipated
some moves.
I
Ooh, there we
anticipated
go.
that you guys would ask me to dance, but the thing is, I can only look like two things when I dance. One of them is a log, where I do this, and the other one is a Muppet, which is just crazy.
Better than that.
I can do the Kermit dance. All right, before I embarrass myself any further, let's go ahead to our second story. France. It's a country that's filled with romance, with style, and of course with some great food. But here is a very French perspective on the cultural differences between Korea and France, shown in a very interesting graphical way. Let's take a look. Now, straight off the bat, the French blogger notes the differences in the writing systems and, in particular, the way we greet each other. 안녕하세요. Food, of course, is a very important part. We have our spoon and chopsticks.
Yep.
In France, the forks and knives.
A number of utensils.
Yeah, is it going to be the baguette or the kimchi? The soju or the wine?
Baguette with kimchi and the soju with the wine.
Yeah. How do we take our coffee?
Wow, that's a rap right there.
I love this part. France has got Daft Punk, but we answer right back with Psy in his Gangnam Style. Films, France has The Untouchables. We have Old Boy. Animations, we have Sophie the Giraffe versus Pororo, or Potongyong, as he's known here in Korea. This is very interesting. A cultural point. French businesses tend to be mostly closed on Sundays, whereas in Korea, they tend to stay open. The way that businesses work as well, you have individual cubicles in France, whereas in Korea, it's a bit more team-oriented, arranged in a circle. Around 9 o'clock in the evening, the French are at home on their couches, but many Koreans, sadly, are still at work. Because we do tend to work quite a deal. Now, this is what I found to be the most interesting here. We think of France as a nation of fashionistas and of style, but this French person who compiled this video was amazed by how much people in Korea are willing to sacrifice in the name of style in order to look good. Now, I've been told this before, if you want to look good, you need to be a little bit hot in the summertime and a little bit cold in the wintertime. Apparently, that's practiced more openly here in Korea.
Well, you know what they say, if you're comfortable, then you're not looking good, right?
Are you comfortable now?
I'm very comfortable right now. So
You're looking good too, so that's good.
I'm super uncomfortable. How do I look good?
You look great.
You look great.
All right. Just fishing for compliments this morning. I don't know. All right, let's move on. I think that Viral Feed can very easily change its title to something called Things That Simon Is Not Able to Do. Because our next video shows off a couple of incredible athletes, and they do things with a basketball that you don't really see on an ordinary basketball court. Let's take a look. I mean, look at these people. It looks like there's nothing they can't do with the basketball. When I first saw this, I thought that has to be CG. That can't be real, but apparently it totally is. Now, this is really, really interesting. It's something called freestyle dunking. There's an acrobatic team of guys who use trampolines to dunk.
Wow.
Look at that. It's not just about getting the ball in the basket, it's about getting there. How you get there. Ooh, flips, turns. This is my favorite. Look how synchronized they are.
How many is that right there?
5 guys.
That's
Can you imagine the practice that must take? Oh,
wow.
I was not ever a particularly gifted athlete, so when I see people like this, I can't even conceive of how this is even humanly possible. It really is super
Right.
incredible.
I know some men will kill to get one dunk shot in there. Have you ever tried?
In an elementary school.
As an adult.
Not as an adult.
One of those little 7-footers, right? I can do a dunk on that.
Can you imagine these guys dancing along to the happy dance? I bet they've got some moves.
They should put that together, I think.
I think so. That would be pretty incredible. Now, our final story, I've saved the best for last. It's incredible. It's about a dad who has a very special talent, and he uses it to be even better to his child. Let's take a look. It's Action Movie Kid, Volume 1. What can this be? Well, it starts off pretty ordinarily, but then the fun starts as the room goes all Matrix. Check it out. Now, Dad has named this kid the Action Movie Kid, and you'll see why. Did you see that? This kid has superpowers. All he has to do is pick up a toy, and it's transformed, pow, into a powerful weapon. Now, of course, these are computer graphics. They're not real because, of course, that would be a little bit dangerous. But they're done so craftily and so professionally because Dad happens to be a DreamWorks animator who has worked on movies like Kung Fu Panda 2 and How to Train Your Dragon. So he knows what he's talking about.
Whoa. It would be scary to have a kid like that.
What I love is that the kid is clearly imagining amazing things in his mind, and his dad is also creative enough to sort of put that to screen and realize it. Now, I imagine this kid right now doesn't really know what Dad's up to, but can you even imagine what it would be like to grow up a little bit and then be shown these by your dad and said, "This is you when you were a baby, and this is what I made for you."
Jinju when she was a baby.
With superpower.
Oh, I can
super
imagine
baby?
Jinju flying up in the room to the roof and
Picking up
Here I
things,
am.
with destruction around the house.
It's just awesome because we all thought about this in our
Yeah.
minds when we were kids, but to
Yeah.
see it put on screen, I think that's pretty special.
What a cool dad, and a bunch of memories that saved. He's not going to have a normal, just a regular photo album,
Yeah.
but he's going to have these videos to show his
And
friends.
it's not just the video. You can tell this kid's gonna have a good time growing up.
All right.
Anyhow, speaking of good times, I had a great time this morning as always. That's it for this week's edition of Viral Feed. Check back next week for more. Ciao for now.
And it's time for our ins and outs segment. And we did give you a little peek earlier, standing in line to get that food. Sometimes we have short lunch times and we just stand in line and the rotations just goes boom, boom, boom. People walking in, people walking out, and people sitting down as soon as someone's done. And this is not a phenomenon that's, well, I mean, you see this a lot here during lunchtime here in Korea. And we had a foreigner who is living in Korea experience that. Laura Nucci joins us. Good morning.
Good
Hi.
morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to our show.
Hi. Yeah.
All right, so tell us a little bit about what you had to experience there.
Yeah, well, actually, I've been living here for 7 years, and yeah, but something that has always surprised me is the pali culture versus the queuing culture, which seems to be very controversial because
contradicting, right?
Yeah, contradicting. Because in a country where everything goes so fast, why would you queue in line in order to get some food? So yeah.
So you would expect Korean people to not wait and just be like, let's just go to the next restaurant.
Actually, Koreans are pretty polite, so I mean, they would just naturally get in line for things like that. But yeah, I guess as a foreigner, it could seem quite weird.
Right.
Yeah.
So 7 years in Korea, you've had a lot of different experiences here, right?
Yeah. Especially this this queuing culture. I don't understand it because why would you queue in line when you don't have enough time or when you have this very fast behavior character?
Okay, so do you think you found the answer?
Well, yeah, actually, I asked some Koreans. I went out, and I think now I know why.
All right.
Yeah, let's check out the answer then in this next clip.
Visit any famous restaurant and eatery in Korea, and you will probably see people in long queues waiting patiently for their turn. These places here are known as matjip, or best eats, tastier restaurants.
Here we are
in Haewa, a lively neighborhood very popular among younger people. Here too, we can find a store that always has a very long queue among. Let's try and see what's it about. Let's go!
All right, we're gonna follow you there.
I was curious, what kind of food was it? This, that, here, there?
Could it be that place? There's so many people already waiting.
I was right. There was a line of people, and even though service was fast, the queue never disappeared because customers kept on coming.
Wow.
What is it? The store opened early this year, and they sell macaroon ice cream. Yeah, it's so popular, they sell out 2-3 hours after they open. It's just macaroon with a big scoop of ice cream in the middle. So why were people waiting to eat it?
Must have some magical ingredient.
이게 지금 한정 판매로 아이스크림 판매하는데 요즘 뜨고 있는 아이스크림 과자라서 먹으려고 줄 서 있어요.
사람들 서 있어서 궁금해서 먹으러 왔어요. 또 인터넷에 블로그, 맛집 블로그들에서 되게 많이 추천하더라고요.
Eating came second. First, everyone was busy taking photos.
맛집 있으면 사진 찍어서 SNS에 많이 올리거든요. 친구들한테 자랑도 하고 맛있었다고 얘기도 해주고.
사람들이 이렇게 많이 찍고요. 올리는 거 좋아하고 유행 만드는 거 좋아해요.
여기 나왔어요.
If you check SNS website, there really are so many photos and reviews posted by people. Trends spread fast in Korea, and whenever there's something new out, like a dessert, people will flock there and take photos to post online. Then the product quickly becomes a huge hit, but just for a short while.
So it's like a short trend.
I'm gonna finally go get to queue and try this ice cream.
Personally, I really don't like waiting on long lines just to eat something. So queuing for this macaroon ice cream was not easy.
Waited for more than 20 minutes.
How long did it take exactly?
I couldn't just go. I was almost in the front of the line, so I kept waiting.
And finally you got it?
Finally got it.
Yeah, after 20 minutes
20
in a
minutes.
queue, I got my macaroon.
Is it worth the wait?
That's the question.
It's really cold, but
Answered
the
with
green
just a
tea
laugh.
and the
Yeah, it was very
almonds
good.
are
Oh, it was
really,
good,
really
okay.
good. So I understand why people are queuing for so long. The quality is good. It's not some simple thing that you can find anywhere. I don't know if I would take it every single day, but to try it once, I'm happy I waited.
And next stop, Seoul Gwangjang Market. There are many places to eat here.
Yukkei.
Yeah, I went directly to Yukkei Alley. All the stores here sell yukkei, which is a Korean-style beef
Every single restaurant here serves the same thing. It's so yukkei. I think there's no other place in the world you can find this. Only Korea.
Now I'll take that over a macaroon any day.
So many yukkei places to choose from. But I saw there was one place that stood out because once again, a lot of people were waiting in line. The restaurant even had one of those machines that give you waiting number. I asked the owner what was the secret behind the popularity.
The secret is word of mouth, and we're not a new store. We have been here for a long time, so of course we have a lot of customers. On Saturdays, our numbers reach between 500 to 1,000.
There's actually a machine, like in the bank. So let's take the number.
105 people waiting.
105.
What?
And I waited again, this time for UK. The customer had lasted 40 years.
And you're up next. 105.
Yeah, also I asked other waiting why they were queuing here.
이상하게 유명한 집이 더 가고 싶고 기다렸다가 또 먹고 싶은 마음이 커요. 계속 오게 되니까 올 때마다 이렇게 향수에 젖는 것 같아요.
Actually, unlike the previous store, there were people queued because of curiosity and the current trend. Most of the people waiting here choose to queue because they love the atmosphere, taste and quality of the UK. They were loyal customers. So this is a commercial neighborhood in Seoul, mostly office buildings. For a restaurant to do well here, they need to be fast because the working masses only have 1 hour for lunch. And all around the same time frame. So in that precious 1 hour lunch, why would you go to a place with a line? I went into the restaurant so I could get some answers on my own. And again, the responses were different from the other places I visited today.
I've heard that one of the specialty of this place is that when you order, the food comes out really, really fast. So let's try and see. 김치찌개 하나 주세요. Start.
You're timing the order.
Yeah, you were getting a full meal, but still customer could be in and out in 10 minutes. And that's because the service is super fast. It's already here, not even 1 minute.
A minute, huh?
Wow.
Takes me that long to make cereal.
빨리 나올 수가 있어요?
We only sell to dishes, and most of our customers work around here, so they only have a bit of time to eat, and it's good for them if their food comes quickly.
No wonder it's a hit around there.
뭐 맛있고 뭐 주문하면 바로바로 나오니까.
시키자마자 나와서 빨라서 좋았던 것 같아요.
I used to think, is waiting in line really worth it? But everyone had their reasons, sometimes for taste, sometimes for novelty and trendy, and sometimes just for convenience. Now I understand the queues.
So there are a lot of different reasons out there that you do have to wait. Most of the time it's usually because they don't take reservations. So you have to just wait in line and you have to try to get there as soon as possible, right? And lunchtime, you know, the turnover rate, as you mentioned, there's a lot of people there. So you did this, you've experienced different kinds of food, from dinner style food to lunch and also the macaroons there. What did you think of it all?
Well, I think it's amazing how people accept to queue, but they also have reasons, and each reason is different on its own. So I think this is very interesting.
Tell us more in detail about those reasons that people, that you found out.
About
the reasons that people are waiting, because it is, you know, sometimes difficult to wait in line for food.
Yeah, I think that if you really don't know where to go, the best option is to opt for a 맛집. So you can search on internet and have the place right away. You don't have to search or to try places that you might be disappointed. Yeah.
Right. I usually go through the personal blogs to see what menus they serve and what dishes, how the dishes look like before I go to a certain place. And I think through the SNS, some places are gaining great popularity.
It's becoming a very good tool for word of mouth.
Yeah, nowadays it's so easy. You just search on internet for a neighborhood or a kind of food that you want to eat, and you find the reply right away. So then you can go there and try it, and if you like it, you could be part of this SNS community by posting pictures or blogging about it.
So no need for these commercials to pay for, you know, these commercials that cost a lot of airtime money. You can just go ahead and utilize the SNS.
Pay people to put up pictures on
really,
SNS.
there are power bloggers that are getting paid from companies
Which
to
is
advertise.
shady, I think.
That's not really fair play, but there is some under the table action that just happened here and there.
Yeah.
But what are some of the foods that you've tried that you would gladly stand in line?
What are you going to put up on your SNS?
Well, I'm going to put on my SNS almost everything, because being a foreigner, I think my friends back in Italy want to know. But I really love the macaroons. Weirdly, I don't normally stop and queue because I don't like it. I think it's annoying, but it was worth the while. It was good. It was good quality, and I was surprised.
How about UK, the raw meat?
Well,
that's a very famous place, apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I like it. I'm half Belgium, so in Belgium we have a kind of tartare. And it was okay. It wasn't that bad. I would put a little bit more condiments, but it was good.
Okay, that's a piece of advice from our foreign customer there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us
Thank you
and
so
sharing
much.
your experience with us.
Thank you.
All right, well, this brings us to the end of this edition of Korea Today.
And you know what we just realized? Last week was our two-day working weekday, right?
This is the full
This
week.
is the full one, right? So we're going to have to brace ourselves for this one. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.